Welcome to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast, where we hear stories from fellow seamstresses just like you. We're able to share their success stories. We learn from wedding industry pros for the best business tips, and we get to hear from fellow sewists and crafters to hopefully inspire our creativity and our love for sewing. I'm so glad that you're here. And if you're a bridal seamstress, I'd also like to invite you to check out our Bridal Seamstress business membership. We have a community of women that can testify to the power of genuine connection, friendship, vulnerability, the power of our six-figure seamstress method, and a genuine connection found in a business mentorship like this. All right, let's dive into the episode. Hello, and welcome back to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of in-person connection in an age where there's so many opportunities for us to learn online, and we have online courses that we can take and pre-recorded videos that we can watch, Zoom meetings that we can join, but there's something super special about getting together with people in real life, being able to give them a real hug, have a meal with them, laugh with them in person, that just creates magic. So it creates magic in your personal life and in your business. And I want to convince you this year to take an opportunity. I know we all have opportunities of getting together in real life, and I want you to take that opportunity and make the plans, make the commitments to join an in-person event this year. And I actually have a few recommendations for you too that I'll talk about at the end of the call. But before I even dive in further to the topic of getting together, I'm going to talk about our first opportunity to hang out, and that is happening June 16th. I've been talking about it for the past few weeks, so I know that you know that it's happening. It's happening in Fredericksburg, Virginia at Ava Loren Bridal with the team from Do You Speak Bride and led by Wendy Rivera. And we're still accepting applications. I don't even think there's applications. I think it's just a registration process. Wendy is taking care of that portion, but we do have the link connected to our show notes for you. The ticket price for that is $2.99, and it's going to be an awesome day. On Monday, we're going to spend the day together learning side by side with other seamstresses and also with bridal stylists. And it's going to be a great opportunity to just connect in the middle of our season and get some fresh inspiration. And if you're feeling like your business is just clicking on all cylinders, but maybe needs a little bit of help in the professional side of things. Maybe you just need to polish up your communication, or maybe you'd like to have better boundaries between yourself and your clients, or maybe you just realize that your communication is lacking in some areas. That's what we're going to be focusing on that day. So June 16th, I hope to see you there. And my outfits are almost totally planned, so I cannot wait. All right, another thing that I want to talk about is our retreat that we had in Charleston. So I realized that I never did a recap episode of that retreat. So I feel like we should kind of work backwards, start with Charleston, and then it's on my mind because we opened up the doors for our next retreat, which is our Fall Fest happening in Scottsdale. Ticket sales started the end of April, and ticket sales kind of exploded. So it was really awesome. Within the first half hour, we sold out of the first cap that I wanted to put on tickets. And then I was like, okay, maybe we can move it to this number. And then that sold out within a week and a half. And so now I think as of this recording date, we have 5 seats left. We're going to cap it at 25 because I feel like 25 is a good number that keeps it small and intimate feeling, but also there's enough different people that you can have different conversations going, and it still feels like a fun, a big event while still keeping that intimacy. So we're going to cap it at 25. And at this point we have 5 seats left. So really exciting, but that also tells me that there is a need for these in-person meaningful connections. And that makes me really excited. So let's talk a little bit about Charleston. First of all, I picked Charleston because I've always wanted to go. It's a really cute town. If you haven't been, I can't wait to go back and kind of just for totally be in vacation mode. We got to spend a little extra time there, Dawn and I did, and just kind of putzed around, and it's a beautiful city. But also it's supposedly warm. So I thought, okay, in January, surely it's going to be at least not freezing. You know what I mean? It's going to be a little bit warmer than the rest of us are experiencing around the country. The temperature is going to be a little warmer than the rest of us were experiencing. No, there happened to be a snow and ice storm the week that we were in Charleston. So we got this awesome beach house, and oh my gosh, it was gorgeous, literally on the beach on the Isle of Palms. And you open the doors and the backyard leads into the beach. It was so cool. And then we started getting these weather reports like a few days before the retreat started, like, oh, possible ice storm. And so people are kind of like freaking out on our Circle app, like, what's happening? What's happening? And I'm like, don't worry, like, the news is always going to be more dramatic. I think we'll be fine. Okay, famous last words. So I flew in early, obviously, to like get things ready and do the grocery shopping and all that stuff. And the town is like, I keep calling it a town. I guess it's a city. It's definitely a city. Everybody's freaking out. Like, oh, you better get to Costco before it shuts down because they're going to close down the bridge. And they're talking about how like the Charleston airport's going to be shut down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is serious. So the storm started Tuesday night. Wednesday was when most of our guests were flying in or driving in. So really bad timing. And the airport turns out it was going to be closed for like, it ended up being closed, I think, for 36 hours or something because the state just didn't have any supplies to like put down the sand or salt or whatever. But what was incredible is of the 25 women who were registered to come to the retreat, 18 still showed up despite cancellations, flight cancellations, delays, they made it and their stories were really incredible. So we had two women. I know you've heard this on our recent episode with Danielle, and she talked about how like her flight was canceled. She was stuck in at a certain airport. She ended up catching a ride with another SBS attendee. They got a ride with some strangers who drove them to Charleston, and then a different group of strangers drove them to the beach house. We had three people who met at an airport in Charlotte. And then they ended up like sharing a 3 hour Uber ride to get to the beach house. Someone else flew into Myrtle Beach and then drove the rest of the way. Another woman slept in the airport at Atlanta and then got a rental car, drove up from Atlanta. There were canceled flights and rental cars, and it was a really crazy situation, but it was also, I don't know, such a cool like bonding experience because the people who got there, they were so pumped to get there. And then we really kind of played up like the cozy, like, snowed in vibe. So we had like comfort foods and the hot cocoa going. And I don't know, it just was something really magical because it was such an effort to get there. And of course, there were several women who could not make it, sadly. And, we mourned them. They got some special gifts sent their way after the trip, which obviously wasn't the same as having them join us. But for the women who kind of really went through it to get to the retreat, it was so special. And it was kind of like this emotional reunion because it took so long for them to get there. And I don't know, it was just awesome. So we look back and it was like such a cool memory, but I remember being super stressed out on Wednesday, like, oh my gosh, who's coming? Our event was supposed to start on Wednesday night, and that was going to be like our like, welcome party, and I had like these fun games planned and our first session planned, and that did not go well. So we officially started on Thursday. We had two speakers. So we had Brenda LeBolt. She focused on sleeves. So we talked about mastering a fit of, long sleeves, mastering pattern making. And we also talked about how to create like a mini line of custom sleeves that you could offer for your clients. So just kind of how to have several styles ready for your clients to try on if they want to add them to their dresses, and how to prepare for that, how to price that out. We also talked about if you want to sell sleeves or little customizations to bridal shops at like a wholesale price. We talked about how to do that and how to plan your time and whatever for that kind of thing. If you wanted maybe less client facing work and more work behind the sewing machine, we talked about like how to introduce your products to local shops if you'd rather go that route. And then day two, Wendy Rivera from Do You Speak Bride joined us and talked about that communication piece from a leadership perspective and how we are the leaders, we're the coaches in our fittings. And so how do you approach a situation as a coach or as the leader of whatever's happening? So in that case, it was like the fitting, right? The communication with the brides. We're the leader, we're the initiator. So, how do we take control of a situation that sometimes might feel out of control? How do we lower the temperature in the room? How do we guide those emotions as the leader and as the coach? So that was a really, really cool conversation. And Wendy brought her lead seamstress from her shop, Ava Loren Bride. And that was really cool to have conversations with her. And if you know Wendy, you know that she really has a heart to bridge that gap between bridal stylists, bridal shop owners, and seamstresses. And so we adore her. So that was awesome. And then in between all those sessions, we had our dress reinvention challenge that we do every retreat. There were great conversations to be had, and it was just awesome. There's magic in getting together in real life with people. And so I wanted to encourage you today to make some plans this year, whether it's an SBS event, obviously we would love to have you at one of those, or you probably have some local sewing classes that you could take in your area. And you don't want to get in that headspace where you're like, I don't have anything to learn, because we all have things to learn. I would actually love to take a class to make a pair of jeans. I've been looking for, there's a pattern of jeans that I love to make called like the worship jeans. And I'm like, when is there going to be a class for that? Because I would sign up for that. I would love that. Anyway, but you could find a class to learn a specific skill. If coming to a retreat or a conference isn't really in the cards for you this year, find a smaller scale event to attend. And here's why. So number one, when you have an in-person event, you have to commit to it. You have to make the travel plans and you have to show up. So when there's like an online masterclass or there's like a Zoom call that you get the link and you could possibly hop on, or maybe you get distracted and if you miss it, there's not really a loss, right? I think we've all signed up for things that we just like don't really show up for. We watch the replay, or I know I've signed up for so many things and I'm like, oh yeah, that's happening today. Oh, okay, whatever. There's no risk if I decide to drop out of that commitment, right? But when it's an in-person event, you have to register for this thing. Most likely you have to pay for this thing. You're investing in your travel and in your lodging, and you are committed and you have to show up. And showing up is always the first step for success. So when you join Secrets of Bridal Seamstress membership, you get a little video from me, and that's the first thing I say is if you truly want to see growth, show up in the calls. Just be there. Be there at the live calls. If you don't feel like talking, listen to what's happening in the conversation around you. You can just be a listener if you don't feel like being a speaker in the Zoom call, but showing up is the first step. And so when it's an in-person event, there's always going to be a part of you that's like, oh my gosh, do I really want to do this? What did I sign up for? But you signed up, you have the plane ticket, or you have your registration that you have committed to, and so you're going to show up to the thing. And that is sometimes the hardest piece is getting your butt out the door. But once you show up, you're there and your body is there. You're going to be where your feet are. You're going to be focused. You're going to put yourself in the room with other seamstresses like yourself. And like we talked about in Charleston, there are women who they committed to this thing and they were going to get there with whatever transportation they needed, however long it took, they're going to show up, right? If it was a possibility. So that commitment is number one with an in-person event. Number two, once you've committed and you're like in the door and you arrived, in-person events are so impactful because there's a connection that you have that you're not going to experience in an online event. So the connections happen because you're physically in this space with other people that you really cannot be left out of, right? So sometimes if we're on a Zoom call or like we're watching something online, it's like you can just kind of work in the background. You can kind of be on your sewing machine. A lot of our members do that because they have projects they have to finish, but they can just kind of like take a back seat on those Zoom calls and absorb the information and not have to participate. But when you're in the room with people like you who want to be your friend, you are going to be just immersed in those conversations. You're going to be learning whether you want to or not. And the in-person events totally nurture friendships, right? I know from the first retreat that we had in Palm Springs, like some of my best friends I met on that trip. I didn't know them aside from on the interwebs. And then it's like we met and it's like, oh my gosh. And it keeps happening every retreat. Like new people come and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you. Like you're my person. And that's how friendships start. And like around my office here, I have photos printed out from all of our get-togethers, our SBS get-togethers. And I'm like, these are my friends. These are my people because of those in-person interactions. And it's not just about the scheduled sessions or the education that we're learning and we're absorbing. It's about the things that happen in between. And it's about those conversations that happen in between. And just one thing leads to another. We get so excited about our topics because we're like, oh my gosh, you do that? I do that too. I do it this way. What do you do? And it's like this high energy 3-day event, right? And it's all of these side conversations that are happening and those like little inside jokes that come up, or just the connections aside from work, the connections of your family balance, or like, oh, this is what I do when I'm not sewing. Oh, me too. I love to garden. Oh, this is my favorite author, whatever. These conversations or those connections aren't the parts of the retreats that are planned. I love to plan opportunities for those connections to come up. Like I love to plan very specific, activities, or even the way that like we eat together, or like how we plan. Everything is planned with intention, right? So it is intentionally, all these retreats and events are intentionally planned to foster that connection and friendship. But those things often come together outside of like our educational sessions. So when you register and you commit to an educational conference or a retreat, or just like a 1-day event, you're signing up to receive the education piece and to walk away with new tools and resources. But what's happening deeper is the connection that we miss. And as people who work alone in our studios, a lot of us have audiobooks that are going, or podcasts that are going as we sew, which is awesome and very valuable. We need friends, and we need people in our lives to just bounce ideas off of, and to reassure us that like, yeah, you're doing things right, or I love the way you're doing that, and I do it this way. And then you just exchange the ideas. So the connections and the friendships that come from these events, I'm not exaggerating when I say like they are lifelong friendships, right? Or some of us, like, there's women that obviously I just see at our events, and I like cannot wait to see them at the next retreat. You know what I mean? And the connections go beyond what happens in the learning environment, the quote unquote learning environment, right? And then number 3, these in-person retreats or opportunities are so important because of the impact that happens through those friendships, through those connections, and even through like the emotions that come from the retreat, right? So it's just a completely different level when we're in the same room together. Your guard is down. You realize like, okay, I'm among people who I can trust, who get me, who aren't judging me. In Secrets of Bridal Seamstress, we do have, I don't know, I wouldn't call it like intense, but it is like a very intentional process to even apply to come to a retreat, right? So we want to know like, where are you in your business? What would you like to achieve through a retreat? And leading up to the retreat, there are expectations that we set. Like, this needs to be a safe place for everyone to share, because we're not going to grow if we feel judged or if we feel unsafe. Like, we need to feel like accepted and safe to truly grow, right? To be able to feel a little vulnerable to grow. And so there are some I don't want to say rules, but yeah, there's kind of like house rules that we talk about before you even show up. And then when we first get together in the room, we talk about like, this is how we're going to treat each other, and just kind of like set the stage for the retreat of what the expectations are, so that the best impact can be made. Because if we feel safe, then we're going to be open to learning and growing, and we're open to that emotional impact too. And there's something to be said about like the safety of sharing, right? Of sharing really where we are. And it doesn't have to be in like the group of all 25 of us. It can be like in the small like dinner setting, or in a lunch setting, where we have just smaller groups divided up for breakout sessions and for our meals. And so it's in these smaller settings that you can open yourself up to the connections and those friendships that yield that impact, right? So it's all of these things together where you're committing to show up, you've like paid the registration, you've signed up, you blocked the time off, you bought the plane ticket, whatever. So you're in the room, which is I feel like the hardest part. You're opening yourself up to those connections, and you might find that there's somebody that like on Zoom, you're like, I don't know if that's my kind of person. And then you meet and oh my gosh, you're like best friends. You're like totally on the same wavelength, right? And then the impact comes from both of those things. It comes from the education piece, and it also comes from just that friendship, that you don't realize that is the most important part that you need. So if you have an opportunity to join something in real life, it doesn't need to be an SBS event. It could be something else. It could be like a sewing class that maybe your local fabric store is hosting. I know we have really cute shops in Seattle and Portland, and I'm like in the middle of the two that host regular sewing classes. And so I'm always just kind of like opening those tabs and seeing like, okay, do they have something coming up that sparks my interest? And then one of my girlfriends who lives in Spokane, hi Leslie, she and I have been talking about like, okay, if we find a class, we got to do this thing together. So we've been looking together for something that'll take us a day or two to crank out together, like a trousers class. I think she took a trousers class last year. We're making jeans or just learning a new skill together. But that's the thing, is it's in person and we're not signing up for an online event because it's just literally not the same. Okay, so here are a few things coming up this year that you could consider joining us for. So obviously I already talked about the thing happening in Fredericksburg. That's June 16th. Our Fall Fest is happening November 5th through 7th, and that is in Scottsdale, Arizona. So normally we're in Portland for our Fall Fest, and I think we're probably going to be in Portland in 2026 because there's something about like the cozy flannel vibe that the Pacific Northwest has to offer. So we may be back in Portland next year. If things go according to plan, we'll see, one event at a time. But this year we're heading to Scottsdale, Arizona. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we have 5 spots left currently. I'm not sure by the time this airs what we're going to have, but we'll have that link in the show notes for you to check out or for you to join our wait list for the next retreat that we have going on. So that's happening November 5th through 7th. And our keynote speaker for that event is Michelle Grosser. She's spoken in our membership before, and she is a lawyer turned podcaster and coach. She's a master life coach, and she focuses on regulating your nervous system, how to avoid burnout, how to recognize signs of burnout, and then what to do to prevent it in 2026. So it totally fits in with the theme of our Fall Fest retreat, which is remembering our why. And, why did you start your business? And are you doing now what you set out to do when you started your business? And sometimes we do need to like take a step backwards, check out that bird's eye view. Like, is this really what we signed up for? Did I sign up for something that feels different than what I thought it would be? And do I have permission to change it? Spoiler alert, yes, you do. So that's what we're going to be talking about during Fall Fest. So there's going to be some business things, obviously, focused on, but it's going to come from a place of your holistic well-being and really remembering your why of when you started your business, whether it was last year or 10 years ago. So consider joining us for that. And then finally, there's the Wedding MBA that is happening in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Convention Center, November. Oh my gosh, I forgot the dates on that. It's the week after Fall Fest. So that's why I'm like, I think it's the Tuesday through Thursday. I think it's the 11th through the 13th. I feel like I should know this. It'll be in the show notes. Anyway, that is a huge conference, and I'm super excited to be speaking at the MBA this year. Woohoo! So I'll be speaking to bridal shop owners. I don't know how many seamstresses actually attend this event yet, but I'm introducing the subject of alterations. And so I'm super pumped to bring that conversation to the table and to represent seamstresses, woohoo, at the Wedding MBA. But why would it be fun for you as a seamstress to attend this event? Well, they have so many, look, there are like 7,000 or 8,000 people who attend this thing. Like, it's huge. And there are so many, there are keynote speakers, there's so many breakout sessions. There's like tons. There's like tons. That's not descriptive at all. But there are so many very specific classes that you can take for your marketing, for your branding, to get ideas of how to bring in ideal clients, how to make your client experience even more special, how to connect with other businesses or wedding businesses in your area. It's just a really, sometimes it's cool to go to events that are like outside of, sewing, just to get some fresh inspiration, some fresh ideas. There are so many wedding pros that I know that you follow on Instagram or you've heard of that are going to be at this event. And I know, like, as a music teacher, so kind of going back in time, when I would go to these, I'd go to like specifically choir director conferences, which were really fun because we'd learn like special warm-ups, and then we'd, go through everybody's favorite kinds of music or whatever, or specific repertoire. That'd be super fun for choir directors specifically. Sometimes I'd also go to conferences just for music teachers, and it would have more broad subjects and then a lot of different specific breakout sessions about specific topics that still relate to music education, even though it's not like choir teacher specific, you know? So in the same idea goes with the wedding MBA, even if there aren't these sessions specifically for like bridal sewing or sewing classes. Wedding pros, we have a very specific niche client. We have a very specific goal when we are marketing. Most of us have a specific season that we're serving in the wedding industry. So you're still going to learn so much information, even if it's not like bridal sewing specific. You know what I'm saying? So that is the wedding MBA happening in November. And then we are changing the dates for our winter retreat for SBS. So I will announce that later. Let's just do 1 year at a time. Okay. But we have, and they're like all sunny events. So Fredericksburg, Virginia is going to be beautiful and sunny and warm, hopefully. And then Scottsdale is going to be awesome. Our venue at Scottsdale has incredible property. So we'll be spending nights outside by the pool. And my goal is to have all of our sessions actually outside. So that'd be great because November in Scottsdale, I heard, is perfect weather. So let me know if you have any questions about any of those events that I talked about. But I really want to encourage you to commit to an in-person event this year and see how it changes your business, because I can confidently say that every single person who has attended an in-person SBS event is life-changing. I know that sounds cheesy, but it is. Whether you meet a friend that you've been close with since that event, or if you've learned something specific for your business or just opened your eyes to what is available to you, like it's life-changing. So I want to encourage you to take the leap this year. 2025 is your year to take the leap for an in-person event. Okay, let me know if you have questions about anything that I talked about. Thanks, guys.